and foremost. At Edvo, our mission is to help people think well. And this really came out of our own individual stories, really of like struggling to think well. For me, it really happened in two ways. One, just through the normal education system. As I was growing up in one of the best school districts in the nation. And I was realizing that a lot of what my school was teaching me was very irrelevant to what was actually important for me to succeed in the real world. I got exposure to that by just like doing a bunch of jobs all throughout high school and realizing, wow, the adults in the world and the real world really doesn't care about grades and test scores and, you know, just the college degree. That's a very small part of success, but really people care about how you think and how you problem solve and how you make sense of the world and how you communicate. And so I really wanted to create an opportunity for myself to teach myself anything, to not have to rely on just textbooks or someone else teaching me and telling me what's important. I wanted to be able to think for myself. So this was a curiosity I've had ever since I was a little kid. I was always the black sheep, and I was just so desperate for a technology that could really help me think well and teach myself whatever I wanted. And then number two, my first startup was actually in the education space. And as I was building out education technology, I was getting exposure to the Department of Education and to superintendents and to all these people that are in charge of helping students learn how to think. And what I realized is, well, there's so much information at our fingertips. The world is changing constantly overnight. Really, the best education is going to be the one that teaches people how to think for themselves and really helps them make sense of all this information, all this knowledge that's already at our fingertips. So I've had this, again, this passion for how do I teach myself? And then how do I also help others teach themselves and learn and think with all the knowledge that is already in front of us. So then I started asking myself, and the team started asking ourselves, okay, well, what are the pain points? What are the frictions that keep people from being able to think well while they're dealing with a lot of information? And the first pain that we realized is people actually spend 1 to 2 hours a day just trying to find the right information. And so I mean, you know, literally clicking on the wrong tab and like juggling between multiple tabs to finally find the thing you were looking for, or asking yourself, oh man, my friend sent me that amazing article. Where did I put it? Where did it go? And so number one, the goal that we have here at Edvo that helps us help all of you and ourselves think well is how can we create digital spaces, digital information environments that bring out the best in us, that create less overwhelm, that create less confusion, that create less frustration. I'm so sad that almost everyone here and anyone I talk to, when I ask them, how do you feel when you open your computer first thing in the morning? They're like, overwhelmed. Like literally it's a war zone and I don't understand where to start and where to end. And this reality is all of us are spending hours every day in our digital spaces. And obviously we want that digital space to bring out the best in us. So we're really thinking about creativity, flow, thoughtfulness, collaboration with people. What does a digital space look like that optimizes for those things? So that's goal number one. Goal number two is how, you know, if you look at some of the most successful companies in the world, somehow they have stayed relevant for decades. Somehow they continue to be financially profitable. Somehow they continue to create really valuable products for hundreds of millions of people. And somehow they're continuing to be more productive. And when you look at why that is, you realize, well, any company that takes itself seriously is investing in data. And data now is the most powerful resource in the world. Oil used to be the most powerful resource or valuable resource in the world, and now it's data. Why is that? Well, the beauty of data is that if you are able to invest in data in the right ways, it lets you see more insights. It lets you understand the bigger picture better. It lets you connect more dots. It lets you see patterns that you otherwise would have been blind to or just would have struggled to make sense of. And so by investing in databases, companies have been able to augment thinking. They've essentially been able to think better as a company. They've been able to help their people make better decisions, solve problems better. You guys see data visualization. You guys see like all these different data analytic tools come out because ultimately there are so many answers and stories in data. And so we asked ourselves, well, what would it mean as people? What would it mean for us to solve problems better? What would it mean for us to make better decisions? How can all of the data we create every day and all the data we work across every day, what would it mean for us to have an honest shot at really augmenting our own intelligence? So goal number 2 is we want to equip all of us ourselves with a personal database that helps us unlock the power of data, that helps us see the bigger picture, connect more dots, and see patterns that would have otherwise been hidden. So those are the 2 main goals. And I'll just, I want to call out these couple images here, and you guys can click play on this YouTube at your own time and watch it. I think it's such a funny analogy and clip, but for those of you who are not familiar with Tony Stark, it's a Marvel reference, but essentially Tony Stark is a character that was able to unlock an AI, a personal AI, essentially his second brain that ends up being incredibly influential in helping him make better decisions. So it's not about the second brain telling him what to do, AI telling him what to do. It's really about the second brain being that thought partner, helping you solve problems better, knowing how you work, your individual context, your unique context, and just really being able to augment your intelligence. So long story short, the big vision here at Edvo is how do we give people an honest shot at augmenting their intelligence? And that's goal number 2. And that personal database layer is so important foundationally for all of that. So I'll pause there. I'll walk you guys through what's most relevant to you right now, our approach at Edvo, how the product actually works, and what you can do with it. But wanted to pause to see if there were any questions or thoughts or anything of that sort. All right, cool. Again, if there's, yeah, go for it.
I have an important question. How much is run on our own computers and how much is server-based? That's quite important. I mean, my computer is not very fast, but it's good.
Daniel, you want to answer that?
So are you coming from a point of view of performance or privacy?
Performance.
I see. So Edvo is the rendering layer is all implemented in the browser. And we are working on optimizing a variety of things. As it stands, there may be some areas where the performance isn't quite as we would like it. But the primary focus at this point has been getting a visualization that is faithful to the vision of having the ability to localize your contexts in the space and to be able to share the space with others and be able to have collaborative sessions. So definitely performance optimization is coming. But it's also important to note that we're doing an awful lot on the client side, specifically because of our coming initiatives on end-to-end encryption, which, as we see it, is table stakes for privacy.
Of course. Yeah. Okay. Well, that's pretty good answering so far. So, yeah, thank you.
Yeah, and I think a big thing, Andy, is, at the end of the day, we're dog fooding Edvo all the time. We're using it across multiple devices as well. But this is where we're so excited to get the community involved because we want to see how it performs as we're optimizing performance. How does it perform on your end, right? So stress test the heck out of Edvo is the short of it, because ultimately, obviously, the ambition here is how do we bring this to hundreds of millions of people? How do we give everyone this type of environment? And we know that that's very nuanced. And so definitely we want to make sure that this is stress tested across many different environments because everyone's different.
Right.
Cool. All right. So let me jump into how Edvo actually works. So guys, like I communicated the large vision here. I think that's really important in understanding our why and in the different discussions we can have as a community down the road. But fundamentally, this just comes down to today, the pain we're solving for. Today, for anything I'm working on, my information is scattered across many web pages and many web applications and many windows. So first and foremost, I just want to know that when I choose to work on something, I can see all the information in one place. It takes me milliseconds, ideally, to find everything and just get to work, right? We want to increase efficiency. We want to increase the chances of you getting into flow state. And that's going to come when you're not constantly having to hunt for things. So I'm going to show you a quick demo, a quick example. The first use case I'd like to start with is managing relationships. As the CEO here at Edvo, a big part of my job is meeting a ton of people and telling them about Edvo and attracting potential team members, attracting potential investors, attracting potential users. And so I'm always out and about going to different events and meeting all these people. It's also really hard to keep as I'm researching people, as I'm meeting them in multiple events, it can get really cumbersome, as you guys know, to manage all that context, all that knowledge in one place. So the way I do it in Edvo, you'll see at this top bar, this is my universal search. The person top of mind for me is a guy named Todd Rose. I just met him a couple of days ago. So you'll notice when I search Todd, anything relevant to Todd has now come in my search results. You'll also see something like these pink pills right next to it. These are tags. We can have a lengthier discussion on tags a little bit later, but these tags I like to see as like my context, right? So immediately Todd Rose, tags of Sal Khan and Feb 2023 Winter Summit, those are my immediate contextual cues of what Todd might be related to. And the reason why this is valuable, there's many reasons why this is valuable, but if I have many Todd Roses, like if I have many Michael Smiths, right, that's a common name. I would hate to do Michael Smith, Texas, Michael Smith, Oregon within the name. I just want to write Michael Smith and then based on the tags, immediately get cues of which Michael Smith that might be. So again, context is everything, relationships are everything. So I'm just gonna go ahead and click on Todd Rose really quick, and you guys are gonna see a few things populate. Everything relevant to Todd Rose in my database just popped up, again, in milliseconds, right? So one time, like when I had first prepared to meet Todd Rose, as we do with anyone we're preparing to meet, we look up their LinkedIn, we look up their Wikipedia, their website, whatever it is, and then we leave them open as tabs. Now we have the mental burden of, oh my God, I hope I don't close out these tabs. I hope my computer doesn't crash, right? Or these are now 4 tabs and 60 tabs, and it's just really annoying and hard to find. In this case, you guys can see on my screen, I don't ever have tabs open outside of my Edvo tab. And by just going on Todd Rose, all of those relevant tabs immediately populated. Now, as I say tabs, I mean really, guys, these are tabs. These are not screenshots. So I can like click on different things and navigate this as if it was its own tab in my browser. In this case, I just have it in my Edvo and I'm browsing the web through Edvo. In addition, and the way you bring in these tabs, I'll show you guys the workflows. Actually, Dara, I'll probably ask you to show those workflows so we can switch up who's talking. But there's really easy ways to bring in these tabs. That's one of the major updates we've made as a product is how do we make it really easy for you guys to bring all this different stuff into these spaces. When we were testing a while ago, people understood the value of Edvo, but it was really hard to just like get into a space and start creating stuff. So we made those on-ramps a lot easier this time around, and we'll show you that in just a second. I also want to call out that in addition to web pages, you can also have different types of file formats. You can introduce PDFs in here. You can literally drag and drop any relevant PDFs. You can drag and drop images. You guys have already seen, you can add stickies. You can add these note cards where you can very quickly start taking notes. There's the intention here is wherever your information lives ideally, or as many places it lives, we want you guys to be able to integrate them with Edvo. We're starting with the most popular ones, right? We're starting with stuff you just work with within your browser, but we've also added, just scratching our own itch, as I'm reading something, as I'm talking to someone, I don't want to have to now pull up a different note-taking app. I just want to quickly jot down my notes. But if you guys do have a favorite note-taking app, you can also just use that note-taking app with an Edvo as long as it has a web version. So that is the premise of just how Edvo spaces work and the main intentions of Edvo spaces. And before I show you again how you bring tabs in, I want to show you a little bit more of this use case. So Todd Rose has his own space. But actually, and by the way, when we have meetings, right, I take the notes here. But if I look at this tab, there's a few other things that Todd Rose is connected to. One being the Feb 2023 Winter Summit Palm Springs. So that might make no sense to you, but for me, in my thinking, I know that that's an event that I went to, which is where I met Todd Rose. And if I click on that, you guys will see that there's just like a bunch of people I met there. And each of these like cards essentially represent their spaces. And I can just right click on anything and jump to topic. And similar to how Todd Rose's space opened up, I'll then get, all of the information on those people opening up. But I also wanted to call out again, there's this PDF, which again, I can full screen, it'll resize, it's all in here. This was a PDF that was emailed to me, right? And so if I wanted to share this space with someone else and just catch them up on, hey, dude, I went to this amazing event, I met all these people. Today, I can literally just go and click share, change the permissions, or enter that person's email address. And when they drop in here, they'll see this PDF, right? Because I've chosen to share everything in here. They'll see the PDF, and they'll see all these people that I met, and they'll be able to jump into their spaces and literally see all the context on all these people. So value number 2 that I've been benefiting a lot from a use case perspective is when I want to just collaborate with people on different things, instead of sending them 10 links that are separate and disconnected, and now they have the burden of opening them up in new tabs and making sense of it in their own way, with Edvo, they can come into this space, see all the relevant information, and just start playing with it and collaborating with me on it. So that is one use case. I'll pause there for any thoughts or questions or comments.
So what I'm wondering here, Shireen, is how many, there have been so many note-taking apps where I've built up a template for people, and then something happens and, we have a falling out and I go to another app and I might have to build the template in that app. And so I would love to be able to get away from this whole urgency to build templates. And when I look at this, I'm like, those are note cards. Those are pieces of information. Now, are those pieces of information, let's say that one of them is Chicago, are those linkable or are those discrete on that card?
Okay, so I'm trying to understand, I feel like there's 2 parts to your question, but I'm trying to understand the latter real quick. What do you mean by linkable? Is it that the Chicago tab, can it be used again and again with any entity? Is that what you mean by linkable?
Well, what I'm wondering is, if I were searching for Chicago, would both Tom Tully and Tommy Miller both pop up?
Yes. Yes.
Cool.
So, and let's show it, right? So I could either click on this tag and go to Chicago, or I can search for Chicago on the top search bar. So I'm just gonna easy peasy just click on it. And you'll notice that yes, indeed, Tom Tully and Tommy Miller both showed up. So anywhere I go, and by the way, I'll show you, I dare show you this space. It's gonna be really ugly. And we can talk about why it's ugly, but I'll just go ahead and click on relationships. And you'll see this ugly ass space open up. But literally any city that I have, in like literally Florida, Los Angeles, SF area, Miami, I just quickly tag them relationships. I want to optimize how things show up. That's something that we're working on, so that these things are just really beautifully organized in a grid in a way that makes sense to me. There's opportunities there for us to learn from you guys to see what you'll prefer. But the reason why I call this out is literally, anytime I create a new city, I meet someone, they're in Los Angeles. I've never met anyone from Los Angeles before, so I'll create the tag for the first time. I'll also tag that Los Angeles relationships. And the reason why this is important to me is I'll just go into relationships sometimes and I'll see, okay, what are all the different cities? If I'm going to, let's say, Peru, I can click on Peru and see who are all the people that I know there. What are all the communities that I've interacted with that might be in Peru. So there's tagging is really powerful because you can essentially create relationships and different types of relationships across all your different topics. And we're working on how to make that more obvious to new users so that you can really unlock its power.
I might also be able to speak to some of that, but the risk is you might not be able to stop me. I think the way I interpreted your question, and please tell me if I'm off base on this, is that we're looking really hard at the fundamentals of transclusion, of multiple referencing. There's different nomenclature that different people are familiar with. But ultimately, the foundational principle, and I'll try to keep this short because I could definitely go on. The foundational principle is, how do we describe entities in the world? How do we relate them together in the most faithful way that we can? And also, how do we derive child entities from those other entities? So that's the foundational in a nutshell, and it's quite succinct, perhaps a little bit cute even, but that's the nutshell of the vision for the broader data model, is allowing you to define whatever entities you want, naming them however you want. We have non-unique naming quite on purpose, and maybe we could talk about that at some point if so desired. But you can create relationships between any of those, and we've used tagging in scare quotes because that's an affordance that a lot of folks are already familiar with. But it's not tagging, it's not hashtagging. Each of these are first-class relationships between these concepts. So I'll stop there.
The way I made sense of it from a product, well, not even from a product side, just from like a non-technical side, is I really thought about how the way our brain works is like literally any thought can connect to any other thought. Like sometimes you'll get a whiff of coffee and all of a sudden you'll be transported to 3 years ago when you were sitting in a coffee shop having this amazing discussion with your friend, and then you're like, oh my gosh, I need to reach out to that friend. It's like the serendipity of the serendipity that comes from anything being able to connect to anything else. There's no rigidity, there's no only hierarchy. It creates that possibility for serendipity. So the way we've created, first of all, the underlying database is a graph database. And I'm going to let Daniel talk on that topic, but it's modeled really on the fundamental principle of anything can connect to anything else. And the way we've designed the interface is also keeping that principle in mind, right? People don't only work in text, like note formats. People don't only work with web pages. People don't only work with sticky notes. People work with all this different rich information. How can we let it all connect in a place? People don't think in hierarchies only, right? My one, piece of research can be useful in so many different areas. Let me connect it to all those different areas and reference it and create even more rich understandings and relationships. So that's kind of been our well, it's been our guiding light in how we've designed these things around just allowing for that interconnectivity and allowing for more meaning to form in that way. Renee, yes. Dar, did you want to say something before we give it to Renee?
Oh, I was just going to shout out to Renee. Yeah, so go for it.
Go for it.
Okay, thank you guys. I think this is all very impressive. I mean, this might be the only tool that really reflects how our brain works, because I've used all other note-taking tools, and I think they're not flexible enough. And the level to which Edvo connects concepts in such an organic way, I think it's great. I have two questions though. The first one is, and this might be a little far-fetched, but have you thought about Edvo as a full-fledged browser? Because the more I see it, the more I think this is the way that browsers should work. I mean, why do we have separate tools for note-taking and browsing? Why couldn't we have a single tool for that? And my second question would be, I'm a designer, so I might be a bit biased on this one. And I know you are focusing on the functionalities, but I was wondering if you're planning to make an improvement to the, the look and feel of the UI. That would be my two questions.
Awesome. Okay,
Yeah.
I'll tackle both, but I know Daniel's going to want to tackle at least one of those too.
Okay.
I'll say my piece on the question number one, and then Dee, I'll pause and you can share your perspective. So Renee, first of all, thank you. As a builder, those words mean so much to me. And you're right, when I'm someone who's an early adopter of many things. And that was one of my biggest challenges when I was looking for like my tool for thought. I didn't want to compromise flexibility. Like I didn't want to have 5 different tools for thought, essentially. One for note-taking, one for like bookmarking web pages. Like I didn't want that. I wanted everything in one, and I was refusing to compromise on that. And then number 2, I also, because of the studying I had done on just databases and seeing things like Obsidian, for example, where the underlying database is so emphasized, I also didn't want to compromise for having like a nice flexible interface where I could do all the things, but then that data is never going to be mine. It's going to be hosted in some walled garden, and I don't actually get to build that like personal database for myself. So thank you for calling that out. It was definitely intentional, and I'm glad you see that. For the browser question, yes. As we built this, we did not set out to do this, but as we built this, there came a point where we looked at each other and we're like, guys, I think we're building a browser.
Yeah.
And that's a really, like, this vision and everything is already scary enough. And then to be like, all right, guys, we're putting our, hat into the browser wars was definitely like a fun realization to have. Here's the approach we've taken. First of all, I just want anyone to be able to use Edvo without having the friction to leaving their browser. Like, I don't want them to have to think, oh, I'm either going to use Edvo the browser or Chrome the browser or whatever my current browser is. I wanted to meet people where they already are. I wanted it to be as easy as possible for them to just like start using Edvo in whatever intuitive way made sense to them. That was my perspective. Dan and Dar will have their own. But then as we again started building this and dogfooded this, we realized it can't live as just a web application and still provide the level of value that 1, we can build, and 2, people actually need. So one day it will certainly need to be its own native application. I think the jury is still out on how much browsery it has to be versus not be. but definitely something we're already working on is there's having a native application affords us a lot more power. We've got to bet on that. There's also technical reasons for doing that as well, or limitations within the browser that we need to take into mind. So yes, is the question, Renee. We've definitely thought about it. We understand that that might be the future, but we also want to minimize frictions as much as possible for adopting Edvo. Daniel.
Yeah. Okay, so that's it's a fantastic prompt in a lot of different ways, I think. The way I would look at it is, if you are interested in painting, in painting a painting, where are you going to have your tools? Are they going to be sitting next to you, or are they going to be across the room? It's a ridiculous question. It's all about being integrated into the context that you are at. And so one of the big problems that we have today with software is this sort of siloization of different pools of data, different experiences. And I think a lot of folks in various forms and using various phrasing and interpretations, a lot of folks are crying out for a sort of integrative approach to their contexts. How do I, annotation in my view is a deeply underappreciated thing. How do I integrate my thoughts and my contexts, my collaboration partners, and how do what I want to be able to do is point to things. I want to be able to have a thought and point to a thing that thought is about. And then I want to have another thought and point to the thing that thought is about. And what two things should I be prevented by my tools from pointing to? And of course, it's a silly question because shut up, get out of my way. Let me point at anything I want. So I'm reading an article. I want to be able to integrate that article into my thought process. I want to be able to highlight aspects, portions of that article. I want to be able to create relationships between things and that passage of that article. So how do you actually do this with your tools halfway across the room? You have to bring the things together. You have to put things in which are conceptually proximate in visual proximity to each other in order to be able to have that holistic integrative experience. And so, whoops, we're kind of a browser, and that's something that we're working on creating a first-class experience for.
Okay.
Renee, just want to give you an opportunity to respond.
Are you talking to me?
Yeah, I just wanted, before I move on to your next question, I wanted to give you an opportunity to respond.
Yeah. I just want to say that it makes sense what you guys are saying. So, yeah.
Cool. Then actually, before I go to the Andy, I saw your hand raised. Did you have any thoughts related to this topic?
Yeah, yes. I mean, finding that solution that could be the Swiss Army knife of knowledge management would be hit, in any context, if it is in the browser or if it's standalone solutions.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I've tried all of them probably, and nobody has reached that level, So I cheer you on, and I'm the biggest rooter for you to succeed to find that holy grail of tool.
Well, we're glad you're in this community, Andy, and I'm glad Alessandra brought you. Renee, to answer your second question. So, well, dude, I'm curious. So we used to have a waiting list. And then we said, well, this is limiting how much we can learn. So we took the waiting list off, and now Edvo is open. And our desire, and there's there's bugs and quality things that we're fixing before we're really going to open up the gates and really start making noise. But for now, with all of you here, we want you to use Edvo and tell us, Renee, to your question, like, where does it not feel right? Where's the UX really like breaking down for you? Where's the UI hurting you? Like, tell us those things, because the reality is, as you know, as a designer, as we're dogfooding this, there's so many things we see that we desperately want to fix, and we're tackling them as quickly as we can from a priority lens. But we also recognize that, you know, we've been working on this now for like 3 years, and I've been personally using this product for 18 months. So there's a lot of things I'm blind to, like I've just become desensitized to, right? So we need you guys to bring in that feedback and tell us very candidly and critically what you absolutely need, and we'll make it better from there. But the short answer is yes, we definitely know there's plenty to improve on. We're actively working on it. We're also searching for our head of design. We're working with a couple folks right now. So it's definitely a priority to make this the best experience we can at this stage.
Okay, that sounds great. Looking forward to contribute then.
Awesome. I would like to show you guys more use cases if you feel like it's going to be beneficial. We have 13 minutes left. So tell me what is going to be most valuable for you. Alessandra says yes to the use cases. Okay. All right. And then if you guys do have like technical questions or any questions, keep dropping them. I love the conversations that are happening.
I love the planning and managing travel, because that mimics a lot of different research projects and how things in one time frame relate perfectly to something in another time frame 5 years later, or what have you.
So let me tell you a fun story. I have been trying to go to Mexico City for like 6 years now, specifically to eat at Pujol, which is a restaurant everyone and their mom talks about, and I have not been to. However, I went and planned my whole Mexico City trip for last Christmas. We were finally going to go. Everything was booked, and the last minute we couldn't do it. Surprise, surprise. However, thank you to Edvo. To your point, Alessandra, I'm not going to lose all that research that I did. So on the top, you guys see, I just searched for Mexico. Anything related to Mexico just kind of dropped down. I'm specifically looking for my trip, right? So I'm just going to go ahead and click on Mexico City trip, December 2022. And you guys will see all this stuff loading up. I'm going to hide the sidebar for a second, but I'll come back to it to tell you what it's all about. But you guys look at, like, and by the way, I'll show you other trip spaces and you'll see they all look kind of different. And I also love that about Edvo, is like, it's kind of just flexible. I just throw stuff in there and I don't really worry about organizing until maybe after, based on how I want to make sense of it. But initially, all I did was like Google. I think what all of us do is I was just Googling, like, what are some top itineraries for Mexico City, right? And so I had all these tabs open, and then I said, okay, I want to bring them into an Edvo space. And then I had a bunch of like open table reservations. I'll make this full screen so you guys can see. This is like an open table reservation I made to this restaurant. And I knew that I was going at, like you guys can see in my notes, 11 a.m. on December 16th. So I kind of organized it for that day, right? So this is like whiteboarding meets web pages, meets notes, and like, again, and these are all images that I just screenshotted of like, okay, I want to go to this like Zocalo Square. And instead of just having my notes, I have a visual reminder again of like what it really is, so that if I get lazy and don't want to walk there, I'm going to be less lazy because it's actually really pretty. But this is one example again of me mind mapping in a way, but also just having that flexibility to bring in all the research and all the resources. And most importantly, I think it's here. Like you guys can see, this was planned 8 months ago in December 2022. And you guys also saw it took me milliseconds to find everything. Whereas by now, all these tabs, all this research, everything would have been scattered and already like closed, right? There's no way I would have left all these tabs open. In this case, it's all here. I'll show you a couple other spaces. notice these are now tagged to Mexico City and trips. When I click on trips, you guys will see there's a few trips I have in here. I've got the Mexico City one, but I also went to Dubai. So I had that one. I went to Greece. I have that one. So you'll see they're all kind of in here. I'll quickly go into my Greece trip. I'll jump to the topic. You'll notice this one is organized a little differently. For Greece, I was invited to a sailing trip. Here is the PDF that person sent me. And you'll notice that like I didn't have to do a lot of planning because the itinerary was built for me. But what I did need to do is book my flights and my hotels. And usually those flights are right there. The itineraries are like in your email hidden somewhere. In this case, I just grabbed quick screenshots of them, including the confirmation numbers and everything like that. I made a note, hey, I've got a layover, I need a hotel. When I booked it, again, I just like screenshotted it, put it in here. So this to me was more relevant because as I was prepping for my trip, anytime my husband was like, yo, like what time are we landing here? Usually I would have to go through my emails, search, sometimes it would come up, sometimes it wouldn't. Or he'd ask me, hey, what's the first day on our sailing trip? Again, I have to find that PDF that was sent to me in a text message that may or may not still be there based on my phone's memory. But in this case, I didn't have to do any of that. As long as I brought it in my Edvo space, and by the way, all these files were literally drag and drop into a space, they're all here. And then within seconds, I could find everything. And now if someone were to tell me, hey, I'm going sailing around Greece, what should I do? I would know I can always find this itinerary and literally share it with them. And I'll know where to find it. And it's going to take me milliseconds to get it to the person. So this is another example of me trip planning. Any thoughts on that use case, or do we want to see any other use cases?
Yeah, can we go back and see what else was on the shopping list? Because that was very cool.
What
I love
shopping?
the idea that messiness is not bad because I'm a highly divergent thinker. And if I get ready for a concert, you don't want to know what kind of tape needs to go over the door of that hotel room because it is a mess. For me to go and do a thing or produce a thing or post a thing, I have made messes.
So tell me, what shopping list are you referring to? What did you want to look at?
Well, the one where one of the choices was travel planning. I think it was use cases.
Yeah. And so what are you seeking? So like for me, travel planning happens in these like, you know, as I'm researching and as I'm planning my itineraries, I'm using Edvo to do the mapping and adding those things. What's your process? Like, what are you craving to see? What can I show you?
Okay, I can think of one. Since March, when I met Andy in Stockholm, I've been to 10 cities to meet creators from our creative work hour. Okay, I would like to plot those things. So if we were going to start an Edvo canvas, how would I start with like a map where I could plot people in the world?
Interesting. So are you okay? Well, I mean, I would encourage you to just like use Edvo and try. I would probably start with creating a new space, and maybe I'll start a space first and foremost for Andy. So I'll do Andy Sporing. Hold on, let me not spell your name wrong. So you guys will notice on the top, I just wrote Andy Sporing. Anything related to Andy or Sporing is populating. In this case, I don't have one for Andy already, so I'm gonna hit create. So this is how you can create new spaces, by the way. This is one of different ways. So I'll just go ahead and create Andy's space. And this blank space is now gonna show up. And I could maybe tag this, Alessandra, to creative work hour. And again, I don't have a space for that. So I'm like essentially tagging this and at the same time creating a space for that. I'll tell you why that might be relevant. Now with Andy, let's say, I would think about what's all the context you want easy access to that's related to Andy. So if it's specifically a trip you're taking to see him, well, actually, I'll take a step back. If it's specifically like the stuff that you guys are working on, right? So anytime you talk to Andy, these are the things you constantly pull up. These are the web pages or the PDFs or the emails or whatever it may be that you constantly pull up. I would throw that in here in this space. There's a few ways you can do that. One way is if you open up your sidebar, you're going to see something called the organizer. The organizer, when you click on it, is going to open up this type of scene, where on the left side, it's going to show you all your open tabs. If you have tabs that are related to Andy, again, stuff you guys are working on, maybe there are documents you guys are collaborating on, maybe there's research you're doing, music, whatever it is that you guys are collaborating on. If those tabs are open, you're able to, by the way, see tabs across all your different open windows, and then just go ahead and select them and drag them into your Andy space.
Oh my God, I'm keeping tabs on Andy.
You're keeping tabs on Andy. That is right.
Alessandra, that will solve your problem with the score for the concertino.
Yes. So Andy has written this classical music concertino for me, and I'm like doing pretty well in the first two movements, but I lost the third movement, and I really did everything I could to find it on my own. And finally, I had to confess to my own composer that I lost that shit.
Well, I don't want you to lose your shit anymore. And so, yeah, this is that one easy way. If you're just trying to keep tabs on Andy, you can just go ahead. The other ways, by the way, you guys, you can also literally just use the Edvo extension. When you create your accounts, all of you were asked to download the extension. I recommend, obviously, that you guys should pin it. And the reason why that's important is on any web page, if you don't want to open up the organizer, if you don't want to go into the Edvo app, your shortcut is use the Edvo extension, and you can just tag that web page to Andy's space. Like literally on any web page, bookmark it, right? You could bookmark that page to the Andy space, and it will populate in the space, and it'll be there for you, really easy to find. So it's all easy access. You can also access the organizer through the extension as well. So those are your shortcut hints. When you're on the go, the extension will be really helpful for that. And then another one, Alessandra, is, let's say Andy says, hey, I want you to meet my friend Katie. So what I would do in that case is in Andy's space, I would hit, there's a few ways to do this. I would just hit shortcut N for note. And when I click on that, let's see if it works. Oh, I think there was a bug that I caught. Nice. All right. So I should be able to hit N. And why is it not working? Hold on. Is Zoom catching it? All right. So there's this as well. In case sometimes our shortcut is acting up, I can hit new note, and there's that note card that just appeared. And I would just quickly write Katie Smith. Why am I doing this? Because Andy said, hey, Alessandra, you need to meet my friend Katie Smith. And by just adding Katie Smith here, I've created now this relationship between Andy and Katie. So when I jump to my Katie space, look at that tag. It's automatically tagged Andy. So Alessandra, as you're meeting people, right? Like people are introducing you to people, you don't have to worry about keeping track of those relationships manually necessarily. As long as you added it to that space, it automatically tagged it to Andy. And then now, if you're like, okay, before I meet Katie, I need to like pull up her LinkedIn, I need to add Wikipedia, I would literally usually I'm just like doing this, right? I'm like looking up Katie Smith. Let's say this is the one. And now I'll show you guys, I'll just use this extension really quickly. And I will say Katie. And that Katie Smith, that space that I already created, also tagged to Andy, shows up. I click on it. And before I close this tab, I want to show you guys it's already here. And it's already titled Katie Smith Wikipedia. I don't have to worry about naming it, right? So now,
a couple quick call outs. One of the things you might have noticed in the search is that we're showing the tags when you, in the search results, we're showing Katie Smith and with the Andy tag. And that's because specifically we think about identity as being derived from not just from the name, but also from the relationships. That this is a sort of foundational concept that we have. If you're forced to create a unique identity for something, you're being forced to predict all of the potential future contexts in which you might interpret this. And that's really just not practical. So that's why we show the tags in a lot of those search results, because you might have different Katie Smiths. One is about the, never mind different people with the same name, it's just there may be different senses or different aspects. So that's I think an important call out. Another thing is basically whenever you're in a space and we're showing the members of that space, each of those members has a tag for that space. We're just not showing it because it's redundant information. You're already in that space. Why would we show potentially dozens of cards, each of which is tagged with the same space that you're already in? So that's one of those little UI fine-tuning things where maybe we show those tags in the future for better clarity, or maybe we continue to hide the tags because it's implied by way of your being in that space.
Yeah. We're running up on time, guys, so there's just two last things I want to show you. And again, please, you all have access to Edvo, play with it in Discord, add feedback, add bugs, add questions. We're there all the time. This last sidebar, there's three main reasons. Number one, you can pin any space. So if you right click on a title, it'll say pin topic to sidebar. You can do that and it'll show up under your pin spaces. So you guys can see my stuff that's pinned is pretty much stuff that I'm like constantly revisiting, like my company's OKRs, hiring needs, conversations that I still need to synthesize, things like that. That said, as I've been jumping spaces, my recents has also been populating. So you guys can see now my office hours are kind of down there because I've jumped all these spaces, but they're still there. So I can quickly in one click access them and jump into them, and my space is loading up and everything is still there the way I left it. And then the last reason for the sidebar is easy access to organizer. And then a few other things, the Discord and sharing feedback and your settings are all in this menu, play with those. But when you are sharing feedback, just jump into the Discord and type away and share that. So that's one thing I want to show you. The second thing I wanted to show you is my favorite feature. There's a doc here. We're not pushing this as a product just yet, but I'm going to show you guys because I think you might like it because I love it. If you want to drag anything into your doc, just drag it and you'll see on the bottom, it says drop here to doc. What the doc is easy access to things that you just kind of look at all the time, but you don't want in a space necessarily. So my doc is literally my Slack, our community Discord, and ChatGPT, because I'm obviously accessing ChatGPT all the time. But again, it's just like, no matter what I'm working on, if I just want to quickly check my Slack, I don't have to switch windows and go to my Slack. I don't even have to go to a space for it. It's in my doc. I click on it, everything loads up, and now I can just like fully interact with my Slack and move forward. So those are just the last couple things I wanted to show you. All right, guys. Again, we're totally past our time. I'm so grateful for you guys being here. Any last thoughts, questions, concerns, anything else?
And where will we find a link to the recording?
I
Will
will
it be-
send it.
Okay,
We'll send it to you guys in the Discord for sure.
perfect.
Cool. We're going to try to have these every week. I want to make a habit of just like at least creating space for these every single week. The product is improving. There's also plenty for us to learn and educate each other on. So I'm going to just schedule one at this time every Tuesday. If this time sucks, aka Andy, you let us know. And we will like find the best time for all of us. But I'm just, we can just kind of see as it goes.
And I just want to quickly call out, first of all, my immense gratitude for your being here and for your perspective. It's really cool. We're kind of emerging from the code cave, and the world is bright outside. Definitely, if you have any sort of problems, if something's acting weird, don't hesitate to speak up about it. Start by reloading the page. we're working on making errors more obvious. There's sometimes subtle little crashes that can cause weird behaviors. So that's something that we're working very hard on. But yeah, try reloading the page, give us feedback. We are super, super eager and grateful.
I just wish you good luck in hunting for the Holy Grail. And I will do what I can for your benefit from them.
Thank you, Andy. All right, guys, until next time, thank you all. Have a great day wherever you are, or night. Bye, guys.
Night, Andy.
Bye bye. Bye bye. Good
Bye,
night.
everybody.
Good night.
See you.
Bye.